and I want to. I understand that I can pull stuff out of my architecture, put stuff in elsewhere. I've already gained that. So what comes next? Now, is this what you're after? I hope it is, because that's what I'm going to be talking about for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's what we're after.
So the next step is to try and get around the problem of Conway's law. You have data in your system, and if you are a monolith or you just keep stuff privately within your system, you've got the advantages in the previous slide, but frankly, you're not getting very much. You're not getting any external data. You're not cooperating with other systems. You're not able to benefit too much by adding to your context. But there is a big problem when you want to get data from elsewhere, and it is Conway's law. Conway's law states that an organization broadly, when you have a system designed for an organization, it will follow the requirements of that organization. So you could have a city which thinks, I don't know, maybe our traffic system is very important, and therefore all the other elements around the data which they offer will tend to follow the same style as they've got for the traffic system. Whereas someone else might have something where it's, I don't know, the waste system or whatever is more important, and they're the ones who actually got to decide how the data is put out and how the data is structured. This is the reason why you go for a neutral data exchange, because if you have something like NGSI, then you have, okay, each attribute has got a name and it's got a type and a value, but that isn't enough. Because what you really want is to be able to exchange between different types of data. Now, I'm going to describe two projects which are in very, very early stages, but this is where I'm coming from completely the opposite end of FIWARE to Jan Willem, is in that I'm doing all the dreamy where we're going next stuff, and you're doing the practical stuff. And this is going to move from one end to the other. So I discussed two illustrative examples. Example number one, car parking. Now, this is an interesting one. Trying to find a picture of a Dutch car park, and the first title I came up was that the Dutch are broadly happy with public administrations. They just can't find anywhere to park. So I thought, this is going to be a good one to use. Right. Imagine you've got a problem. I'm told that you have a large amount of devolution in the administration in the Netherlands, and effectively this means that you are a series of warring city-states who may or may not be passing data around conveniently. If you have a system where you can't communicate to the system next door because they've either not chosen FIWARE or they've chosen a different system or however they've got their data, then they have, for example, lots of parking spaces. And they're just outside your borders. And you think, just a minute, how can we get around our traffic problem if we don't know that 5 minutes down the road, there's a perfectly empty, usable car park? You need to be able to get data from other authorities which are able to provide the information, potentially in a different format, which could then also be able to solve your issue. The problem on the right-hand side is another one which came up, which is cross-border tourism, which is even worse. I mean, at least you all speak the same language. I have the advantage of being British, where if you cross the channel to the Netherlands, they also speak English. You cross the channel over the Irish Sea, they also speak English. You cross the to the south, they kind of speak a very strange French sort of English. But hey, everyone speaks English. It's dead simple. But what about this situation where the authority is no longer speaking the same language? What about where you have situations where you've got the same location, but it's multilingual? If you're talking about bus stops in Brussels, if you go for the big square in the middle, is it a bus stop to Grand Place or is it a bus stop to Grote Markt? Well, the fact is that there are structures you can put in to your data which will illustrate that it's the same thing. It's just the fact that it's the data is coming in. Now, this is where we get onto the meat of what I want to talk about. I'm going to the computing stuff. The bit which has been added to JSON, which is the basic payload for FIWARE, is linked data. And JSON is evolving to JSON-LD, which means instead of having key values, you effectively get triplets for everything. The main difference between what you'd see as JSON, which is basically the bits in orange, is that you get funny little @ marks in front of some of your stuff. One of which is something called an @ context, and this is a way of, instead of leaving you to use whatever name you like name, born, or spouse, for your attributes. However, you agree for a common set of long names for fully qualified names for all your attributes and various other bits of structure as well, so that we can communicate. Here's a very quick example. I have a colleague called Harpreet Singh. Harpreet Singh works for the FIWARE Foundation. He is our blockchain in smart cities expert. Look, I was going on LinkedIn, and that isn't Harpreet Singh. That's Harpreet Singh. Actually, they're both Harpreet Singh, except that, of course, our Harpreet's got a space in there. And the thing is that you can't distinguish between Harpreet Singh, the blockchain expert in smart cities, and Harpreet Singh, the blockchain expert in smart cities. So actually, what you'd really call him is a full URL. Now, it's very difficult to get full URLs into your data. So it's much easier, if I go back to the JSON, you say, okay, I'll put the full long names into this additional file, which you call person.JSON-LD or whatever it is, this @ context field, so that I can say that a name really applies for the actual name of a person, rather than it's a login name. Or you could use date of birth for your field, but I will use born. It doesn't matter. We agree to a common URL in our data models, so I can get hold of your data. Now, this is already in there for JSON-LD, and what we have with FIWARE, and we'll go to the next 5th slide, is the equivalent for NGSI. NGSI, as I said, FIWARE is basically just JSON done right. NGSI-LD is just adding in the linked data bit. It's this additional bit in red at the top, saying that, okay, context is, it has got this. There are 2 lines to the context. There is this, what you have in your model, which is your connection to describing what the attributes are, and therefore you can pass them on to other people. And then there's the core context, which is things like property and relationship and all the other standard stuff you'd expect from a FIWARE system. So what this means is that you no longer have pick your own types. You actually have only a subset of types you can use. This is the difference. The difference is highlighted in 3 colors. Obviously, it's a different URL. There are at least one broker which can deal with both of these, so it can deal with both at both endpoints. But typically, you would have instead of having types like array or postal address or what have you, every type is a property or a relationship. And the fact that it's a postal address or it's a schema.org postal address or whatever is relegated to this context file, which is also read within the data. Now, it means you have multiple output formats you can deal with. You can output as JSON-LD, or you can output as JSON, or you can use this normalized format. So and the whole point is that whoever's receiving it will want to be able to understand it and use it. I don't know what the format of the future is going to be, but whether it's going to be RDF, it could be XML based, it could be JSON based. Who cares? I really don't care. What I want is a situation where, if necessary, I've got sufficient information on the computer to be able to parse the data and get hold of the information as possible. So technically speaking, what you've got here is the old model had entity with metadata in it, and it was always called metadata, whereas the new model has got this properties of properties or relationship of properties. So it's a more navigable knowledge graph. It's much more the whole idea here is to make the whole thing more usable by machines. Examples of various different types here. So you've got type and ID is the same, except you would now officially use the long URLs. You can deal with the short values with it throughout your data because you just put this is in a header, but actually the building is a URI blah 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 data model building. There's a Smart Data Models initiative, which is basically an address book for these things, so that if there is, say, for example, an attribute like, I don't know, turbidity of water, there is one defined by Saref. So we can say, yeah, this is a turbidity of water. This is a Saref turbidity of water. So you do the same thing over there. And then you can say you can have multiple relationships, multiple properties. You're going to have properties, what have you. Okay, so the main difference is that whenever you are putting data in using NGSI, you also include this link header, which is the big block of nonsense in your curl request. All that's saying is that these short names, the real names of these short names is X. You can also put it into the payload if you prefer. Now, the output format can be put into be done in various different ways. So you can just get out ordinary JSON, or you could get out I said NGSI, or you could get hold of JSON-LD itself. Now, the JSON-LD, you can change things around. As you can see, I've put in my category in this particular case using this long name. There's a proposal to get the and it's currently going through to get the values. You can expand the values as necessary. So this gets around this problem, which is saying, if you have a location, what is it? I haven't got it in Dutch. I've got it in several other languages. I've got it. It could be location. Is it geo-coordinate? Is it place? Is it ubicación, which is my awful Spanish? Standort. My German's okay. Occupation. I don't know about your Japanese. They all mean location. But the thing is that you can use whatever short name you like within your data, and obviously you want to be able to get this from somebody else's data as well, so you can get hold of what is actually a Etsy-defined location string. This is what it all comes down to: is that the long names, and there are operations you can do to expand and compact. So I actually have a tutorial which gets out all my data using the Japanese attributes. Fine, whatever. But don't think different languages. Think different organizations have called these things different names. Similarly, I'm giving an example of vocab here. I did this. I've been doing stuff with language as well, but there are additional parts to JSON-LD. So, for example, you can actually have categories on the URLs on the right hand side, the values, or you could have multiple languages on the right hand side. Like, this is the name of the street in Dutch, and this is basically NGSI following the lead of what the JSON LD people have been doing for several years. I'm trying to keep it relatively short because I could go on for hours, but I am running a series of FIWARE webinars over the next couple of months. I've got 4 of them all based on NGSI LD with devices, and NGSI combining with existing V2 systems. So if you want to know more about JSON-LD and where NGSI LD is going, these are the links. These are all the things you want to do. And that's basically my short presentation, unless I've got lots of questions. So how are we doing?
Thank you, Jason. I got in between some WhatsApp messages from people who were saying, so this is where next. I made my promise, and but when I understand it correctly, and this is the second time you explained it to me, is that it doesn't matter what data you have, you can it can communicate with each other. That's what we're heading, right?
Yes, the whole point is that with existing V2, you can communicate more easily within your own system. However, with linked data, it already is getting some traction. But the whole point is so that you can talk to somebody else's data. Now, the downside is that
that's a beautiful, bright future.
Yeah, the downside is that you need to mark up your data accordingly, saying, you know, I really am this URI for my data, because computers are dumb. They don't know that, you know, a name is a login name or a name is a real person's name or what have you. However, if you can if you can decide on a common URI, then you've got an ability to do this. Now, I didn't go into details, but the actual at context string can also give you more information. So I could mark up, say, for example, I have a relationship, and it's going to be it's going to point to one of the following types of things. It could point to a person or an organization.
Okay, so maybe just a practical thing. Maybe you can stop sharing your screen so we can see more screens from each other. And if there are more questions, because I can imagine that there are more people who think, hey, wow, this is very interesting. I want to
now, how do I stop sharing?
You have to know the right data and to speak the right language.
Yeah, I'm going to try and work it out now. I've got a screen up here, your speaker, so I'm going to be that one.
Stop share should be also in the bottom or at the top or something.
I'm down the bottom. That me?
I think you have to go up with your...
I'm trying to work out which thing I've got. I can see everyone else. Oh, here we go.
Well, we still see your screen, yeah?
There we go. Dylan's stopping. There we go. I really should do a basic Dutch course, shouldn't I?
Are there questions in the group after this very inspiring presentation from Jason?
Well, if I understand it correctly, it's not really a question for Jason, but probably for the rest of the group. I think the concept that has been shown here by Jason is the same that is happening in the common ground development, developed by municipalities. I don't know if Jason has ever heard of this movement. It's essentially meant to prevent duplication of data with a centralized storage, so that with a URI, everything starts to be linked instead of copied.
Yes,
in that way.
Yes, that's a much better way of doing it. And also, it's possible that your organization could have additional data on the same element. It's possible that I could get context data from multiple sources, but the fact that I'm getting it about the same fundamental ID, fundamental URI, means that we can then combine that data together.
Yes. Yeah. Daniel, you also said in the short feedback you gave from your workshop earlier today that you thought the presentation from Jason could be helpful for your workshop. Did it fulfill your idea?
Well, as a matter of fact, of course, we're talking about open urban data platforms, and it's also all about connecting several platforms and data sources, of course, and then it's of course important that you speak somehow the same language. So I can imagine that this could be helpful indeed. Yeah.
Now, there's this is where the Smart Data Models initiative comes in as well, in that another thing which FIWARE is involved in, we're not a dictator here, but we're a partner, is that we're trying to collate well-known usable sets of URIs. The fact is, I don't care whether you use, I don't know, the Saref stuff, or you use the schema.org IoT schema stuff. I just want to be able to have that list of URIs available somewhere. And the point being is that you don't want to maintain your stuff privately. You want to have it publicly and out there so that we're not duplicating stuff. So one of the links on my slide, the last one was a presentation from my colleague Alberto Abella.
Yeah, we will share the links.
I sent the presentation to Jan Willem before I started. Please push that out elsewhere. I can put some stuff in the chat if it's quicker, or I can just keep talking.
Yeah, I will put the links in the chat now, and we will share them also at the website. Okay.
Was that quicker?
Yeah. But you did it to me only.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So I won, but I still won.
Yeah. Because was it Lederen? Is that to everybody then?
Yeah. Iedereen is everybody. And
okay.
It's interesting that the examples you gave, you give by this small Dutch versus English in only WebEx. That's what it's all about, more or less. Yeah,
I mean, if we could communicate using URIs, then we'd know we're talking about the same thing. Now, the thing is that it's understood that is actually a right pain if you're trying to develop. You don't want to develop using long names by anything. So this is allows you to have this interchange between the two. And of course, the nice thing is that the way that things like, I don't know, RDF and JSON-LD and what have you, various other ontology mechanisms are going, is that they're becoming more interchangeable. So you can say, define your data structures using one of them, and then get whole information from somewhere else. Indeed, one of the things which this Smart Data Models Initiative is doing is creating Swagger files for each of the data types, so that you can just press a button, it'll give you some stubs in, say, Java or in PHP or in C# or whatever, because you don't want to write this stuff. No one wants to write this stuff. It will all to be generated, and of course that way you know that your name is going to be right, because it's going to be generated by a computer.
So if there are other questions in the group, please join the conversation. So now we're speaking the same language, and we don't copy data, but we store its data at the same place, and then we can make a policy that then we can really head up to border crossing policy, or as you call it, city states, right? So, so my question to the group is there anybody in the group who says, "Hey, this really fits to my work, to the working group I've had"?
I think this one would be interesting for the Metadata, the citizen science group, who's comparing the data.
Yeah, I think that's so.
This is what we talked about, with Roeselare sharing data with any other city, Amersfoort, for example.
Yeah, so
and between all these, here in Holland, we have a lot of citizen science projects, and we're now looking for a way to share this data. There are different sensors used, of course, cheap ones and very expensive measurements. And how can you compare this data? That's one part, but also to share the data between cities. That this one would be very interesting for us.
Yeah, because it's all a matter of getting the being able to communicate it. Because you said you could get one small project which is isolated,
Yeah.
And I suppose the thing which needs to be done is that you need to try and bake this sort of thing in early in your generation. So you need to be aware of the fact that these are common names for stuff. I was actually doing something on a water project this morning, and I just got to the stage, okay, I now need to generate my at context file. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to say that, the long name for a device is a FIWARE device. The long name for a temperature reading is a SAREF temperature reading. The long name for an address is a schema.org address, because these are common ones which are being used out there in the wild rather than making my own stuff. My personal opinion is that the number of long names which don't use FIWARE is better, because we can say, hey, there really is actually an organization out there who's already maintained this stuff. The big daddy in this is schema.org. Schema.org do an awful lot of things like persons or restaurants or what have you. It's just that for quite a lot of smart city stuff, there isn't a leading standard, put it that way. So getting hold of stuff in a common location is good. One of the things which I know that is definitely in progress is getting in a load of stuff from smart tourism. Now, there's a lot of stuff which is going on in Spanish-speaking countries there. And obviously, we need to make sure that we can, and we do this, we just automatically translate into English. Because if it's just in one language, it's no good. You need to have it in a language which many other people speak, which fortunately for me is English.
Yeah. Okay. So we're heading. Thank you so much, Jason. For me, it was very inspiring and confusing at the same time, and that's.
I've got a series of webinars coming up. It's every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. Get your coffee in,
Right.
and if you don't like Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, you can always watch the recordings.
Great. If you want to know more about it now. Thank you so much for this presentation, and thanks everybody for joining us. A big part of this day. The interesting thing is that you talked about processes and we talked about processes the whole day. Everybody, please feel welcome to stay and chat. And there was drinks, etc. Promised by us, but we hope everybody has that in their own study fridge. So
this one is the cup of tea.
Yeah. Always British. You never lose that even when you live in Berlin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but very interesting. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for the inspiring day.